everyone. Sorry, we're having a few technical issues here. And I'm delighted to start this online interviews top tips session with Philippa Jones and Leila Vasquez. Philippa is a consultant from Fraser Nash Consultancy, a mechanical engineer who graduated from Durham University in 2014. She now works the Programme and Management Consultancy team with experience of delivering multidisciplinary projects across varied business sectors. Leila Vasquez works as an electrical engineer for SSE Renewables and recently completed the 2-year engineering graduate programme, which gave her an opportunity to get experience across several business units. And they're going to give us some top tips on how to conduct online interviews. So if Leila and Philippa would like to put on their cameras and their microphones, then hopefully we can see that. And I'm just going to open their slides. I can see Leila.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, I can hear you as well. And I'm just waiting to hear from Philippa. And I can see that Philippa's microphone is on and her camera's black, but hopefully she'll come on shortly. Leila, would you like to begin? And we'll see if we can sort Philippa out as you start.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just get my slides here. So hopefully you can all see that. So yeah, hi everyone, and thanks very much for the intro, Elizabeth, and welcome all. I hope you're having a very good Friday and that you're enjoying the student conference so far. So in this short session, myself and Pippa are going to talk to you about virtual interviews. You all know the strange times that we're living in, and a big part of it is adapting to the circumstances and adopting new ways of doing things. So while virtual interviews have been there for quite a while, I actually did mine almost three years ago now when applying for the grad scheme with SSE. They're now becoming the standard norm, not only as an initial tool to record some defined Q&As, but also to conduct live interviews in virtual assessments. So hopefully this will provide a bit of an insight to this type of interviews and some of the things that you can do to prepare and ensure you absolutely nail them. So if we quickly go to the agenda, the session will be divided into main sections. I will start with an introduction to the main types of Q&A interviews and tips, including a video from our fantastic recruitment team here at SSE. And then I'll hand over to Pippa, who will be covering delivering virtual presentations. So yeah, first of all, as you know already, my name is Leila Vasquez. I'm an electrical engineer working in offshore wind within SSE Renewables, and I literally just finished my grad scheme around 3 months ago. So I've been with SSE now for 2.5 years. So for those of you who may not know SSE, we are a leading generator of renewable electricity in the UK and Ireland, and one of the largest electricity network operators in the UK. We are also committed to meaningful action on climate change and supporting the net zero transition, and are very proud to be a principal partner for the COP26 taking place next year in Glasgow. We also have been committed to increasing diversity since 2024, have a comprehensive inclusion and diversity strategy, which has brought us quite a lot of external praise, as you can see at the bottom of the slide. Our work is actually focused on an on an up approach, meaning that we make opportunities fair, transparent, and attractive for all people who want to come into SSE, that we make it an inclusive place to work, to encourage people to stay on with us, and that opportunities to progress are transparent for all who want to come up. And one thing that is important to note as well is that we continue to feature on the annual Bloomberg Global Gender Equality Index, which reflects as well the efforts and progress that we're making with increasing female representation at all levels. So now that we've set the scene and that you've heard my proud presentation of SSE, let's get into the types and tips for virtual interviews. So there you go. Yeah, so the first type of virtual interview is usually the one-way video interview. This tends to happen at the beginning of a recruitment process and is typically a sort of first screening. You will be basically recording your answers in a platform for the employer to watch later, and your employer can send a script of the questions in advance, or you can have them presented directly while you do the interview. You will be given a URL plus login details to use the video recording software, and once you're done, your answers will be sent back to the employer for assessment. You will usually be given a deadline to complete the interview and can do it at the point that works best for you. With regards to the process, usually the questions will appear in the screen and you will have a preparation time that will vary depending on the type of question, really. And after that, you will have a time to answer. And some employers may give you the possibility as well to re-record. So going into the actual tips, the first two tips are applicable to any kind of interview, as you all know, I'm totally sure. So of course, research the role, the company, recent news, their values, people working there and all those things. And something to research as well for virtual interviews is the platform that you will be using, as that might get you a bit more comfortable with it if you know a bit more about it. Practice the interview questions as well and make sure that the answers tie in with the role that you're applying for in the company. There's lots of available information on typical competency-based interview questions and response techniques as well, such as STAR, for instance. And something that I used to do is record myself with the laptop answering some of the classic questions and timing them as well. It might be weird in the beginning, but it's a great way of getting familiar with the process and also spotting some of those M's that we tend to add to the end of each sentence. At least I know I definitely do. And also get an overview of our body language. Those things are things that the person watching the interview later will pick up. So the more that you practice, the more comfortable that you will be and more natural. So in relation to tips closer to the day and in the same interview day, the first one is just to make sure that the surroundings where you will be recording are clear of distractions, no pets or things like that, and also just things like lighting. If you can have natural light, that is a lot better, for instance. With regards to the device and the network speed, so you'll probably have the option to conduct the interview in several devices. So just choose the one that will be more comfortable for you to use, easy to watch the questions and all those things. And if you are conducting the interview in your tablet or phone, make sure that you've got the latest version of the app to be used. And if conducted in your laptop, then ensure as well that you've got the latest version of a software like Adobe Flash that you may need for the actual video recording and for accessing the platform. In relation to the network quality, you can also run a speed check just to be sure, and the minimum is usually 2 megabytes per second for download and upload. And if that's if what you've got is below, then I'd suggest to try and get closer to the router, or maybe ask someone or the people in your house to turn off their usage just while you do the interview. And one last thing there is just remember to plug in your device. It might be like a very simple piece of advice, but it's not fun if your laptop runs out of battery in the middle of the interview. And this has happened to me before. So just something to bear in mind. In relation to what to wear, I would dress in the same way that you would go to a real interview or to work. Apart from giving you a professional appearance, it will also increase your level of confidence and get you into that sort of interview focused mode. And lastly, meet the deadline as well. So try to get the interview done ahead of the deadline set by the employer, or at least a number of hours before, just so that you're able to prepare everything that we just cover. And also leaving it a bit too late is likely to make you feel more anxious and rush things a bit. And now we've got the 3 last tips that are mostly applicable during the interview. So the first one is that you will usually first see a setup page on fast facts about the process in a tutorial. So make sure that you pay attention, as they will give you information about the timings, the different buttons, and all the things that you will need to follow the entire process. And they may also give you a practice session. This is something I would definitely recommend, as it will give you a chance to look at your body language, intonation, surroundings, and those things, and make sure that you pick up any adjustments that you need to make. For timekeeping, Something that I found quite useful was to scribble down the key points that I wanted to mention in the answer during the preparation time that they give you before the question, and also the order in which I was planning to cover those, basically. Having a structured response can be quite helpful to keep track of the time and ensure that you are mentioning everything that you wanted to cover. And the last one, the closeout. Make sure that you also have a plan for when you finish answering the questions. In the trials I did before my actual interview, I struggled a bit with knowing what to say in the end of the question. So something that helped me was to relate the closure to the question that I was answering. So for instance, if the question is, what's your greater strength? You can say that to, that to summarize, for instance, I believe that my coordination skills will be my greatest strength and the strength that would prove key in making valuable contributions to projects in this role in this company. So now, actually moving on to the second type of interview. This type of interview is conducted online in real time by using Skype, Teams, or other video conferencing software. Preparation for this type of interview is very important, as it's likely to be one of the last stages in the recruitment process. And while all the tips highlighted before for the one-way interview will definitely also apply, there's a few more things to take into account for this interview type. So first of all, you'll be using a different platform, which the employer would have communicated to you in advance. So just make sure that you can test the platform beforehand with friends or family, for instance, and use that opportunity as well to test the microphone and quality of sound. If you're able to practice the questions with them, that would be absolutely great to get feedback on things like intonation and body language. Most platforms as well have an option to preview before actually joining the call. So make sure that you have a few minutes before the interview time to check this, as it will let you see how your setup will look like and if you need to make any adjustments. Punctuality. So make sure that you have everything ready ahead of the time. Much better if you need to wait for the employer to join the call than the other way around usually. And the last one is just don't forget to smile and always maintain good eye contact with the employer, which effectively means looking into the camera. And this shows more interest and seriousness on the role, and it will also keep you from distractions on watching at the video. So now that I've covered all the tips from a bit of a personal experience, I'll quickly show you a great video that was recorded by our experts from the resourcing team within SSE, and in which they reiterate the key tips and things to keep in mind for virtual interviews. So if I quickly close this and open the video.
Like with any interview, the more prepared you are, the more confident you'll feel. So make sure that any device you're using is fully charged, that the internet connection works in the room you're going to be doing the interview from, and that your webcam and audio are working well, and do this well ahead of the day.
Video interviewing will probably feel really strange to begin with, but by asking a friend or a family member to do a video conference with you to try and practice some interview questions is a good way to try and learn to feel a little bit more comfortable in front of the camera, and can certainly help you prepare.
Pay careful attention to your surroundings. Make sure the backdrop is well lit and your surroundings are neat and tidy.
Dress appropriately, just like you would for a face-to-face interview.
Ensure you have all the relevant documentation to hand, such as your CV, the job description, and any notes that you might need. Also, make sure that your phone is on silent and you close down all the open tabs in your browser, and you've made everybody else in your household aware not to disturb you.
Get yourself a glass of water and arrive, albeit virtually, in plenty of time, the same way you would for a face-to-face interview.
You can't shake hands, but first impressions do still really matter. Don't forget to smile.
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 And just be yourself.
If during the interview the video or the audio is a little bit glitchy and you're struggling to hear, mention it to the interviewers. It might be something that's easily fixed.
Stay focused on the camera, make good eye contact, listen to the interviewer, and show enthusiasm for what they are saying.
If you're asked a question and you need a moment to think, just pause and take a sip of water before you answer.
Technology sometimes can fail. Stay calm. If you or the interviewer get disconnected, dial back in. Make sure you've got an alternative contact on hand in case it does fail. Hello? Yep. Yeah, it's failed. Can we continue on the phone? Thanks. Appreciate that.
Do your research and be prepared to ask some good questions at your interview. It will hopefully spark up some good conversation, which is the perfect opportunity to let your personality shine.
Hi there, can you hear me?
I was muted. So yeah, all to you, Philippa.
Great, thank you. Again. Ooh, sorry. There we go. See my slides okay? Great. Thank you, Leela and Elizabeth for the introduction. I'm here to talk to you a bit about delivering virtual presentations. So given the world we're all living in at the moment, assessment centres aren't going ahead as they previously would have been, and we're seeing more and more employers take preference of asking interview candidates to deliver a virtual presentation. So I'm just here today to share some top tips on how to do that. I'll start with a bit about me and then why presentation skills are important to engineers and why they're testing that. What makes a great presenter, how to structure your presentation, a bit about verbal and visual delivery, handling some difficult questions, and then I'll summarise. So, a bit of my background, I graduated from Durham University in 2014, having studied mechanical engineering. I secured a job at Fraser Nash Consultancy for this September following graduation. They are a multidisciplinary engineering consultancy, so we work across all types of engineering and all business sectors. While at Fraser Nash, I started within the supportability team, but moved after a couple of years, after 4 years, into the program and management consultancy team. I've also undertaken a secondment over the last 6 months, and now I'm back to my program and management consultancy team. I just wanted to include this to demonstrate that whilst your first job is a step on the ladder, it is just that first rung, and within only 6 years of work I've already moved a couple of roles, so it's all just stepping stones. But on to presentation skills, which I'm here to talk about. Why are they important? Well, truthfully, it's difficult to be an engineer and avoid it. They are a really frequently used form of communication, of explaining sort of technical detail to your own project team, to your customers, to your senior managers, to your line manager, internally, externally, both formally. You could be stood at the front of a room with 10 people, or informally, it can be during a Teams call, much more informal. But presentation skills cover all of these forms. It really helps to build credibility with your customers if you can present information well. What makes a great presenter? So just some key messages here to think about. Show passion about the topic. If you're enthusiastic, the people listening are more likely to be. If you're not, then why should they be interested? Tell the audience only what they need to know. This is a real skill in pitching the level of information appropriately to the audience. How much detail do you need to go into? Concentrate on the core message. Don't go off on tangents and discuss topics that you aren't there for the message of the presentation. Smile and make eye contact, just the same as you were having a conversation in person. When delivering a presentation, smile and make eye contact too. Start strong. This is really important to get your audience listening to you from the off. I actually recommend memorizing your first sentence or so that people are engaged and listening from when you start speaking. Use the slides to back up the message. This is really important. You are delivering the presentation, not the slides. Your vocal is what is giving the presentation. Yes, the slides are there to emphasize a point or bring attention or diagrams or whatever, but you are delivering the presentation, not the PowerPoint. Use your voice effectively, use your intonation just as you would in an interview, questions, or in a normal conversation, and continue to use your body language. Even if you're doing it virtually, it makes no difference. It really helps. So, structuring your presentation. Start at the beginning. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Just like I did, I started with an objective and I moved on to the content. So I made you aware of what I was going to talk about. In the middle, tell a story, keep it logical, keep the flow going by keeping it building in things that happened in time or building in level of detail. Follow the agenda that you've set out, stick to the topic, as I've said, keep your slides brief and give your message verbally. And a rough guide is, if it's a 10-minute presentation, aim for 10 slides. Yes, okay, your first slide you may spend less time on, but there'll be one that you spend slightly more than a minute on. It balances out. That's the general rule of thumb. And at the end, summarise. Tell them what you've told them. As you'll see, I'll come on and do that shortly. Verbal and visual delivery. So just like Leela's covered in the interview tips, there's a few things to consider when you're delivering a presentation as well. First impressions are everything. That's all you are giving an interviewer is a first impression. You're not with them long enough to do anything else. Please make your bed and move the alcohol stash from behind you. It's not going to give a very good first impression. Dress appropriately, ensure you won't be distracted or interrupted. Test your connection in advance. In fact, actually, my HR department told me that they've had a couple of interview candidates request a check, and they're willing to set that up in advance so that you know that the platform will work on the day. Consider your camera angle. Looking up your nose isn't a great angle. How are you presenting information? Prepare your slides in advance. That should be a no-brainer, and talk them through a good couple of times before the day. Use images, but be careful of copyrights, and don't overuse animations and transitions. You'll see I've used a bit of the appear function, but nothing more fancy. And how are you delivering the presentation? Have it up and open and ready to go before you join the interview. Speak clearly and concisely, slowly. Don't read the slides, talk around your points, pace yourself. I recommend memorising your opening, rehearsing your transitions between slides, and knowing how you're going to conclude, just like Leela said for the other type of interview. And importantly, be yourself. If you get any difficult questions about the topic of your presentation, don't be scared. Pause, think, then speak. Don't be afraid to ask the interviewer to repeat the question if that would help. Talk through your thought process. Being an engineer is about being presented with a problem and going on a journey to solve it. We're not expected to be able to answer them on the spot. So talk that through as well, even if you can only get so far in how you would address the question. If you don't know what to say, if you don't know the answer, then say that. It's worse to make something up and be caught out. How would you go about finding out the answer? That is something you might want to consider talking about. Be honest. And a top tip is to plan a question to ask your interviewers at the end. They will always give you that opportunity. If you're worried, if you can't think of anything that straight away, have a look on Google. There's loads of examples. Just to summarise, both formal and informal presentation skills are really key to being a successful engineer. If you know your topic, there's absolutely no need to be nervous. Keep it logical. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you've told them. Plan both your verbal and visual delivery. And just remember that the interviewers aren't aiming to intimidate you. They are there to support you and get you to pass. Be yourself. Good luck. Thank you for listening. If anyone has any questions, please do feel to type them into the Q&A section, and Leela and I'll happily help. I can't hear you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, me neither. Still nothing.
I had it muted on my screen. Yes, sorry, I was going to say, Pippa, thank you so much for saying, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've told them, because that's the advice I was given for making speeches, and it has always held me in absolutely good stead. We don't actually have any questions. We have one question from Kelly Shungu, who says, I have a phone interview before my video interview. Any advice for a phone interview?
So which one should we start with the phone interview? Or
yes, I'll field the questions. So yes, if you start with the phone interview.
Oh yes, I missed that one. So in relation with the phone interview, what I would just ensure is that so your employer is gonna let you know which application or which software you're gonna use. So make sure that you've got the app, for that application basically in your phone, and then make sure as well that it's within reachable distance in case you need to, touch anything in the screen, and also that you set it in a way in which is easy for you to clearly see what questions are being asked. And also the angle of the camera, as Philippa said before. Those are the things that I would have in mind for a phone interview. Oh, is it phone like just to ring on the phone? Sorry.
I think it's to do with somebody if you've got a phone call before your video call. So it might be like a first interview's on the phone, and then you might get a second interview on a video. So I think it's very similar. And I would always say, dress as if you're having an interview, just because that puts you in a mental space that you're feeling professional. So Lauren James asks, if you mess up an answer on the one-sided online interview, how is the best way to continue?
If you have realized that you've made an error, I would just pause for a second, think, and just be honest. Say that, oh, actually, what I wanted to say was this other thing. It's perfectly fine to get nervous and start with the wrong foot, and that has actually happened to me. I didn't even know what words to use in English, and I just stopped for a second and said, okay, I'm just gonna start again, and that's absolutely no problem. And that was the interview for SSE actually, and here I am now. So you can see that even if you make small mistakes, that doesn't matter.
So what are some topics we can ask the employer questions about?
Shall I go? I would always say a good one for that is about career progression. So what grade would you start at? Is it a grad scheme? I just think you'd probably be aware of that, but what is the likely route that other graduates have taken through the company over the first 3 to 5 years, say? I'd say that would be my go-to question to ask an employer.
I would think as well about news that you may have read or heard about the company in the latest weeks, something that maybe caught your attention that you could mention and maybe start a discussion, because that would show as well that you've done your research in the company too.
Okay, we have Strictly Speaking finished, and we've got the networking breaks happening. I'm just going to put that slide up. We've got 2 more questions. So from Mayo Greenway Harvey, hi, I really enjoyed the presentation. How do you make yourself stand out?
I'd say passion, showing interest and enthusiasm about the company and working in engineering will make you stand out.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with Pippa. I think that's a very key point, and show enthusiasm for the role as well, and looking forward to starting with the company and starting in that role.
Kyriakos Vasilas has said, could you specify some general questions that are asked in an interview about engineering that we can prepare for?
you've got usual competency-based interview questions in which they ask you about, a certain time in which you've demonstrated leadership or coordination skills or things like that, or how you solve a problem. Those are quite typical questions for an interview role, because they show how you're gonna be likely to act in that situation if it comes to that in the workplace. And then just make sure that you know all the characteristics of the role that you will be applying for, because there will be some technical engineering like knowledge that you were expected to know, or you're expected to work with in that role. So I would also try to do some research on those in case you get any technical question in relation with that.
And Shara Gelly has asked, what's the best way to prepare for competency-based interviews? I've always used the STAR model: the situation, task, action, and response or result. But what would you say, Leela and Pip?
And
that's exactly what I've used, actually.
The STAR is how I would describe things. The other thing I would do is have a number of scenarios on the end and touch of your fingers that you can think about. So be that your final year project, be that when you led your sports team, or some events that you are involved in your life that you can then use that event for the question that is asked. Because you're never quite sure whether you're going to be asked, showed teamwork, showed leadership, showed collaboration. But if you've come up with 4 or 5 sort of scenarios that you can then that you can think about and use for the question, it'll help.
I think that's all very excellent advice. Thank you both for your wonderful presentations and descriptions, and I hope everyone feels confident about video interviews, because I suspect even when we can meet in person, that companies may choose to use video interviews in the future. I'm now going to end the webinar. You can go into your networking breaks, and at 3:30 we've got chartership and professional registration, or an introduction to multidisciplinary engineering. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.